This incident was definitely the most terrifying experience of my entire life. I went to a nightclub with my coworkers, some I consider close friends, on a Friday night as we usually did. We all got slightly drunk that night. However, the night remains mostly clear in my memory. About 2 hours after turning up at the nightclub, I vaguely remember talking to a few guys that came up to me. Didn't remember anything out of the ordinary, though. I lived 3 blocks away from the nightclub we were at that night, so I guess when I got tired or bored, I left. And I do remember walking to my house that night. I think it was when I was starting to sober up a little bit. My friend sent a WhatsApp message while I was walking home, asking how I got away from the guy. I replied asking which guy she was talking about. She said the creep that wouldn't stop talking to me at the nightclub. The nightclub was such a blur that I didn't remember which specific guy she could be talking about. We always used to leave a key inside a fake rock in our stoop. I always used that key on nights like this, so that I wouldn't have to walk around with my keys on me while I'm out. I got home, locked the door behind me, and went straight to my room to fall into my bed. I laid down in bed in only my t-shirt and underwear. I was dozing off in bed, then suddenly I heard the front door open downstairs. The only thing I was thinking was that it could be my older sister getting home, since she usually got home really late. I heard some noises downstairs. I assumed my sister was making a late-night snack in the kitchen. And then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. My phone buzzed next to my head. It was still in my hand. My friend sent me a new message asking if I got home safely. Before I could reply, that's when I noticed I had missed her earlier message, warning me that the creepy guy had left the nightclub right after me. Now I was mostly sober but tired, and I was starting to become suspicious. Steps continued coming up the stairs outside and stopped right outside my door. Then the door quietly opened. It was dark outside of the room, so I couldn't see who was standing at my door. I called out for my sister, and then the door shut. But I didn't hear whoever it was walk away, and that made me think they were still standing right outside my door. I immediately texted my sister asking if it was her. Surprisingly, she texted back right away saying it wasn't her. At the time, we lived together in a small rented house. My dad was the only other person who had a key, but he lived across town. So I didn't know what to think, other than it was an intruder. I called 911, and hearing the emergency operator speak to me for the first time in my life really made the situation seem that much more severe. I described what I believed to be a break-in, and as I was on the phone, I leaned over, turning on my bedroom lamp. As the room went from dark to bright, I saw a man crouched behind the door. I screamed and shrieked while still on the line with the emergency operator who kept asking what's wrong. The tall, muscular man with an unhinged look opened the door and fled the scene. I heard him run out the front door. I stayed on the line with the operator who told me every move I should make until a cop car actually showed up. I was still tired and startled, so the info I gave on the police report was probably not the most accurate, but I described the man to be late 30s looking, tall and muscular with an unhinged look. One of the 2 officers then lifted his hand revealing a key he was holding and said he found that in the front door lock. It was the spare key that we keep inside the fake rock. The intruder used it to get in, meaning he followed me home from the nightclub and watched me take the key from inside the fake rock before unlocking the door and returning the key. The officer told me to be assured he'd be patrolling close around the area until morning and advised my sister and I to keep our doors locked and find a new hiding spot for the key. The next day I felt relieved despite being exhausted. I told my co-workers about what happened, and they explained in detail that some creepy-looking guy at the nightclub had been following me all night, trying to talk to me every chance he got. And somehow, I was oblivious to it. I stopped going to nightclubs for 6 months after that. We don't hide a spare key outside anymore. This event took place around 20 years ago in Dover, New Hampshire. I was about 21 years old back then. I had been working at a small family-owned bookstore in downtown Dover for a little while. The staff was close-knit, with an owner who treated me like family. The other older women were friendly and protective toward me. Being the youngest employee, I was given many hours and ended up closing the shop most nights. Not long after I started working there, a man began showing up often and quickly became a regular customer. He was a local fitness trainer who seemed very interested in wellness books. He was around 35 years old, divorced, and seemed financially well off. He usually browsed the fitness and wellness sections, occasionally buying a book or two. When I first met him, he introduced himself as a fitness instructor and gym owner, and he had a very charming smile. I admit he was good-looking and seemed nice at first. My coworker stood nearby and gave me a concerned look. She introduced me as the new employee. He joked that it was refreshing to see someone young working in a bookstore. He spent time talking about his successful fitness business and how he would visit more often in the future to see me. He made sure my coworker didn't hear that last part. After a week or so, this man started coming in almost every night when I would be closing alone. It was always right before closing time, which really bothered me. He would spend time browsing books, rarely buying anything, but staying until I had to ask him to leave. Then he started asking inappropriate questions. He wanted to know my age. He asked where I lived. He also asked if I had a boyfriend, but before I could answer, he said something along the lines of how a young, pretty, and fit thing like me must have one. He offered his services if I ever needed fitness guidance and mentioned he had training equipment at his house. I always gave vague answers and never revealed where I lived. Once he asked if I would come over and help him organize his home library. I declined. At this point, I told my boyfriend that this customer was making me uncomfortable. I mentioned the man would likely come to the store on Friday night and asked if he could keep me company during closing. My boyfriend came to the store that evening. Not long after, the fitness instructor arrived and looked surprised to see my boyfriend. I acknowledged my boyfriend with a nod. The man greeted my boyfriend in a condescending tone. His entire demeanor changed, and he stared at me like I had betrayed him. My boyfriend leaned against the counter while the man quickly gathered some books. The man checked out and told me he would see me soon, completely ignoring my boyfriend. My boyfriend noticed his anger and watched him leave. The next day, the man confronted me about my boyfriend. He asked in a sarcastic tone if that was indeed my boyfriend. He made a rude comment about him, saying he wasn't good enough for a girl like me. I responded that my boyfriend was actually wonderful. After that, my boyfriend started staying with me to close whenever possible. The fitness instructor began waiting for my breaks and followed me around the store. The other employees became annoyed, and I started hiding in the back room. Then one day, I injured my ankle and stayed home for a few days. I lived in a small apartment nearby the bookstore. That day, my friend from Boston was visiting. My friend brought dinner, and we were catching up inside. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. I opened the door to find the fitness instructor holding a small bag. He said he heard I was injured and brought an ankle brace and some ice packs for my recovery. He tried to enter my apartment. My friend looked confused. I told him no thanks, explaining that my friend was already taking care of me. He looked at my friend with obvious anger. He shouted that he came all this way for me and accused me of having multiple boyfriends. My friend stepped between us, told him to leave, and closed the door. The man pounded on the door and yelled at us. Eventually, he left. I told my coworkers and boyfriend about the incident. My boyfriend was furious and wanted to confront him. Things calmed down briefly, and the man disappeared for a while. Then came the final confrontation. The fitness instructor waited outside the store as I left for my break. My boyfriend was on his way to meet me. The man stopped me and insisted he was taking me somewhere. I refused, telling him I was meeting my boyfriend, and demanded that he leave me alone. He said he was taking me to Colorado and told me to shut up and get in his car. He told me to leave my boyfriend because he could take care of me forever. He spoke quietly through clenched teeth while gripping my wrist and trying to pull me away. My coworker burst through the door, shouting and grabbing his shoulders. The man grabbed my hair and yanked hard. My boyfriend ran over, tackled and restrained the man. Someone called the police. The man was arrested and handcuffed. As the police took him away, he shouted that I belonged to him and we would be reunited again sometime soon. I filed for a restraining order immediately. I later heard he relocated to Colorado and closed his local business. That was the last I ever heard about the fitness instructor, and that was nearly 20 years ago now. Sometime soon never came, thankfully. It was March of 2018. Me, along with my boyfriend and his younger sister, who was 11 years old, had gone to a small nearby movie theater on a Tuesday night to see the family adventure movie Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. We usually went late on weekends to get the whole theater to ourselves, plus I had off on Wednesday that semester from college. When we entered the theater, at first, it seemed like we were the only ones inside. But then his sister pointed somebody out. It was a man in a red windbreaker jacket sitting in the top right corner. Seeing one other person in the theater was a little sketchy, but nobody would really give it a second thought. We picked upper middle row seats with a railing in front so we could put our feet up. We each sat with an empty seat between us for more room. I know that sounds weird to do with my boyfriend with me, but having his sister there made it a different story. I was sitting the closest to the edge, and therefore, the closest to the one other guy in the room besides us. Within about 10 minutes, the previews were over, and the movie was starting. The lights in the theater dimmed to darkness, and the only light now was the light projecting from the screen. His sister took out her popcorn and started to eat them obnoxiously loud. About 5 minutes into the movie, over his sister's loud eating and rapper noises, which for the record we had told her to stop making, I thought I heard a pretty loud sound come from above and behind us. I waited a few seconds to sneak a glance behind us and saw that the guy that was sitting in the top corner had moved down a row. Which was odd, but again, I didn't give him more than a second thought. A few minutes later, when the movie was already starting to get interesting, I heard something from behind us again. I turned when I thought it wouldn't be too obvious, and again, the guy was a whole row closer to us. I leaned to my boyfriend and told him, while chuckling, that the guy keeps moving closer to the screen. He shrugged his shoulders and didn't even show interest in checking. I told my boyfriend if that man moved again, then I would have a problem that he, my boyfriend, would need to fix. Then I managed to concentrate back into the movie. I'd say not even a minute later, without even hearing anything this time, I just turned around out of curiosity and saw the man a whole row closer. But this time, he wasn't at the last seat of the row anymore. He had moved further down the row, closer to us. Now, he was only 4 rows behind us. I nudged my boyfriend, then he turned around to check, before he looked at me and gave me this confused, concerned kind of look. He asked me if we should move, and I said definitely not. At this point, I wasn't able to pay attention to the movie anymore. Even though I was facing the screen, I felt like the man's gaze was hitting me in the back of the head. I told myself if he moves closer, I would turn around and firmly ask him what he was doing. But then I also thought that maybe I was looking too much into this. Maybe he was just a normal guy who happened to keep switching seats for a better view. Once more, I turned around, and the man was only 2 rows away from us now. Closer to the center of the row, or rather, directly behind us. His head was just completely down, looking at his lap. I didn't even bother to check what he was looking at. He could have been looking at nothing. I literally opened my mouth, ready to say something, but I was just too nervous to confront him. I was only 19 at the time and not very confrontational. My boyfriend's sister got up during a slow part of the movie to go to the bathroom. About a minute later, I turned to see if the man had gotten closer again, this time actually ready to say something. But I was shocked to see nobody behind us. It was completely empty. I told my boyfriend, and he seemed pleased by the news. But then I stood up in pure fear, thinking of his sister. Telling my boyfriend to wait there, I ran out of the room and into the empty theater halls. I saw the man in the red windbreaker entering the women's bathroom down at the end of the hall. Fearing for his sister's safety, I ran down the hall toward the bathroom, about to push the door open when I heard his sister call me from down the hall. I saw her waving me over from the family restroom area, which was in the opposite direction. I ran to her, got my boyfriend out of the movie room, and we went to the front desk. The team working the front ticket stand called the police, showed us and the cops the video footage of the man walking down the hall, and then we filed the police report. I'm just so grateful that his sister decided to use the family restroom instead of the women's bathroom. Because if she had been in there, even with my showing up, I have no idea what would have happened. It's been years now, and the man has never been identified.